I never thought I'd find myself writing this, yet here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet. My name is Mark, and I'm a 35-year-old husband who thought he had a solid marriage with his wife, Sarah. We had been together for over a decade, and I always believed we were the kind of couple that could weather any storm. But life has a funny way of shattering illusions, doesn't it? Looking back, I should have noticed the signs that something was off. It started with small things. Sarah would come home late more often, claiming she was busy at work. She's an executive at a marketing firm, pretty high up on the ladder, so I accepted her excuses without question for the most part. But then there were the little things that felt off. She became more secretive with her phone. She would get these texts that she'd quickly hide when I walked in. When I'd ask about it, she'd snap at me, saying I was being paranoid and that I needed to trust her. That was my first red flag, but I chose to ignore it, chalking it up to stress from work. Things escalated. In the months that followed, the late nights became a routine and I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. I tried to bring it up, but all I got in response was her eye rolls and hollow reassurances. "You're being ridiculous, Mark," she'd say. "I'm just busy with the project." I wanted to believe her, but doubt began to creep in like a slow poison. Then came the fateful night that changed everything. I had decided to surprise Sarah with dinner. I cooked her favorite meal, arranged a nice table setting, and even bought a bottle of her favorite wine. I had this vision of us reconnecting over candlelight, but when I texted her to let her know I was ready, I didn't get a reply. I waited an hour, then two. Finally, I called her. No answer. My heart sank, but I told myself she was probably caught up with work and would be home soon. But as time went on, my anxiety turned to suspicion. I grabbed my keys and headed out, determined to find her. I drove to her office, but the parking lot was empty. A chill raced down my spine. As I thought of the worst-case scenarios, that's when I remembered her mentioning a work dinner that she had planned last week. I didn't know the venue, but I thought I might as well check it out. I arrived at the restaurant, my heart racing. As I walked in, I scanned the tables, praying I wouldn't see anything that would confirm my worst fears. And then, through the corner of my eye, I saw her. There she was, laughing, leaning in closer to someone across the table. My stomach dropped when I recognized who it was, our lawyer, David, the very same man who had handled our wills. I froze for a moment, feeling the world around me blur. Suddenly, I felt a mix of nausea and anger surging through me. I couldn't move. I just stood there watching them. Sarah was twirling her hair, that same flirtatious gesture I used to think was reserved for me. I could see the way she leaned in, her laughter ringing in my ears like an ominous bell. Every ounce of trust I had in her shattered like glass. They were sharing a bottle of wine, and the way they looked at each other was enough to push me over the edge. I managed to collect myself and walked out, my mind racing. I would confront her, she needed to explain herself. But first I needed to think. All the times she made me feel like I was being unreasonable suddenly replayed in my mind. I was furious, but mostly I was heartbroken. I spent the drive home in a haze, my thoughts spiraling. How could she do this to me? What was wrong with me? I had given her everything, yet here she was, betraying me with my own lawyer. It felt like a cruel twist of fate, a betrayal I never saw coming. When Sarah finally came home hours later, she seemed oblivious to the storm that was about to erupt. I could hardly contain myself. I confronted her, my voice shaking with rage. I demanded to know why. Her reaction was nothing short of shocking. She laughed, yes, laughed, and then lied right to my face. "You're being ridiculous, Mark. I was at work and David just happened to be there too." That was the moment that would change everything. Her eyes darted around, filled with panic, and I could tell she was lying. I felt a fire ignite within me, a sense of determination unlike anything I had felt before. I couldn't let her get away with this. The emotional impact was a whirlwind. I felt anger, sadness, confusion, and betrayal all at once. I had trusted her, and she had shattered that trust. I didn't know how to move forward. I could feel my heart breaking as I stood there, watching a woman I once loved so deeply turn into a stranger before my eyes. As I began to gather my thoughts, I realized I had a decision to make. I could either wallow in this heartache or take control of my life. And that's when I decided I would not let her get away with this betrayal. I would fight back, and I would do it in the most effective way possible. It was time for me to reclaim my life, starting with the best legal representation I could find. To be continued. After that night, I knew I needed to make a plan. I couldn't just sit back and let Sarah continue to manipulate the narrative. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt an urge for revenge that I couldn't ignore. I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole would go, but I was determined to find out. The very next day, I started my search for an attorney. I wanted someone who could help me navigate this mess and ensure that I came out on top. I spent hours online, reading reviews and reaching out to friends for recommendations. It felt surreal, like I was entering a new world, one that I had never anticipated being part of. That's when I found Lisa. She was a powerhouse in the field of family law and had a reputation for fighting hard for her clients. When I called her office, she took the time to listen to my story, and I could hear the determination in her voice. "We're going to get you through this, Mark," she assured me. It was the first glimmer of hope I had since the betrayal, and I clung to it. I scheduled a consultation, and when I met Lisa, I was struck by her confidence. She was sharp, focused, and had a no-nonsense approach that resonated with me. I poured out my heart to her, detailing everything from Sarah's late nights to her affair with David. Lisa listened intently, and then with a steely gaze she said, "We're going to take this one step at a time. Your priority should be to protect your interests." With that, we developed a plan. Lisa suggested gathering evidence, text messages, emails, anything that could support my case. I felt a mix of excitement and dread at the prospect of digging into Sarah's life, but I knew it was necessary. If I was going to fight back, I needed the upper hand. That evening, I approached Sarah with a calm demeanor. I wanted to maintain the facade of normality while I collected evidence, but I could feel the tension bubbling beneath the surface. "Hey, any chance you'd like to go out for dinner tonight, just the two of us?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Sure, where do you want to go?" she replied, somewhat distracted as she scrolled through her phone. I suggested a local Italian place, hoping the atmosphere would help us connect. As we sat down and ordered, I watched her. She seemed different, more guarded, and I caught her glancing at her phone numerous times. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was likely texting David. It made my blood boil, but I had to stay calm. During dinner, I attempted to engage her in conversation, but she kept giving short answers, visibly distracted. I threw in some questions about her work, trying to gauge how much of what she told me was truth. "How's the project going, that big campaign for the new client?" I asked, using the same casual tone. "It's fine, just busy, you know," she replied, her tone dismissive. I could feel my frustration building. She was lying, and I couldn't understand how she could sit across from me, sipping wine, pretending everything was normal after what she had done. After dinner, I suggested a walk to clear our heads. The evening air was cool, and for a moment I felt a sense of normalcy again. But the underlying tension was palpable. I took a deep breath and decided to bring up the subject that loomed over us. "We need to talk about us," I said, steering the conversation toward the elephant in the room. "Mark, can we not do this right now?" She snapped, her irritation boiling over. "I'm tired and just want to relax." "Relax? You think we can just pretend nothing happened?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You've been lying to me, Sarah. I saw you with David. You have to face the truth." Her expression shifted to one of pure shock, and in that moment I could see the facade crack. "I'm not lying. You're being paranoid. Why would I cheat on you?" she retorted, her voice shaky. "Because you have. I've seen the way you look at him, how you behave. It's all too clear," I replied, my anger spilling over. I was tired of her excuses, tired of her trying to paint me as the villain. For a moment she was silent, and I thought I might have finally broken through. But then she did something that left me speechless. "Fine. If you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be together at all," she yelled, her voice echoing down the street. I was taken aback by her accusation, my heart racing. "You think this is my fault? You're the one who's been unfaithful." The confrontation spiraled into a heated argument, and for the first time, I realized how far apart we had drifted. This wasn't just about her affair. It was about everything that had built up over the years: resentment, misunderstandings, and the lack of communication. It felt like we were two strangers fighting over a life we built together. After what felt like hours, we finally returned home, the silence between us thick with unresolved tension. I could feel the walls closing in, and the weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air. I couldn't stay in this toxic environment any longer. The decision was made. I would fight for my rights, my dignity, and most importantly, my future. That night I went to bed with a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. I was done being the victim. With Lisa by my side, I'd gather the evidence needed to secure my future and reclaim my life. The emotional toll had been heavy, but I was ready to turn the pain into strength. To be continued. The days that followed were a blur of emotions and actions. I immersed myself in the process of gathering evidence against Sarah and David. Lisa had advised me to document everything. I started keeping a journal, recapping each encounter I had with Sarah and noting any suspicious behavior. It felt like I was turning into a detective, an unexpected and slightly unsettling role, but necessary nonetheless. I began to go through our shared accounts, searching for anything that could serve as evidence of Sarah's infidelity. It was a painful process, but I was determined. I discovered a few late-night charges on our credit card that she had overlooked. Expensive dinners and drinks were charged to our account, and each one felt like a dagger to my heart. I had trusted her, and now I was finding out just how little she respected that trust. One evening, while Sarah was out for one of her work meetings, I decided to take a look at her phone. I knew I was crossing a line, but I felt justified. I needed answers. I went through her messages and found nothing incriminating, just mindless chatter with her colleagues. But then my eyes caught a message that sent my heart racing. It was from David, and it read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. 8 p.m. at the usual place. I'll make it worth your while. XOXO." It felt like the ground beneath me gave way. I couldn't believe what I was reading. The betrayal was right there in black and white. I snapped a screenshot, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. I was ready now. I had the evidence I needed. With this newfound determination, I headed to Lisa's office the next day, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I had been waiting for this meeting, eager to share my findings. When I walked in, I could see Lisa was already prepared to discuss the next steps. "How are you holding up?" asked, concern etched on her face. "I found something," I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the message. "This is from David, they're meeting tonight." Lisa studied the text, her eyes narrowing. "This is excellent evidence, Mark. We can use this to your advantage." The way she said it made me feel a flicker of hope. Maybe there was a way to turn this around and come out on top. "What's the plan?" I asked, anxious to hear her strategy. "First, we will need to secure more evidence of their relationship. If they've been meeting regularly, we may be able to gather more texts, photos, or even video footage. You may have to do some surveillance," she explained. The idea made me uneasy, but I knew I had to do whatever it took. I spent the next few days trying to stay one step ahead of Sarah. I invested in a small camera with night vision, hoping to catch her in the act. It felt surreal, but I was committed. I had to know the extent of her betrayal, and I refused to let my emotions cloud my judgment. That night I set up the camera discreetly in our living room, hoping to capture any incriminating evidence. I felt like a spy in my own home. As I waited, I couldn't help but think about how far I had fallen from the man I used to be. The trust and love I once held for Sarah were replaced with bitterness and vengeance. I had a few hours to kill before the meeting, so I decided to distract myself. I went for a run, trying to clear my mind. But no matter how hard I tried, the image of her with David haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Around 7 p.m. I got the text from Sarah. "I'll be late again tonight, just a few late-night meetings. Don't wait up." My blood boiled. I felt the urge to respond, to confront her, but I resisted. I couldn't let her see me unraveling. Instead, I waited, heart pounding, as the clock ticked closer to 8 p.m. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap at any moment. At 8 p.m., I grabbed my keys and left the house, determined to follow her. I parked a few blocks away from the restaurant where I suspected she'd be meeting David. As I waited, I kept replaying all the moments we shared, Our wedding, the laughter, the plans we made for the future. It was all shattered now. I felt the weight of the betrayal crashing down on me, but I couldn't let it break me. I had to see this through. After what felt like an eternity, I finally saw Sarah's car pull into the parking lot. My heart raced as I followed her inside the restaurant, keeping my distance. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but I had to know. I found a spot near the entrance where I could watch without being noticed. When she walked in, I felt my heart drop. She looked beautiful, her hair cascading down her shoulders, dressed to impress. She walked straight to David, who was already at a table waiting for her. The way she smiled at him, the way she leaned in close, ignited a fury within me that I hadn't anticipated. I pulled out my phone, recording everything. They laughed, shared intimate glances, and I could see the chemistry between them that I once thought was reserved for me. It felt like I was watching a scene from a nightmare, a betrayal unfolding right before my eyes. I was filled with a mix of rage and sadness, the reality of what I had lost slamming into me like a freight train. As I continued to film, I couldn't help but wonder how I would confront her. The evidence was undeniable, and when the time came, I would make sure she understood the gravity of her actions. I would show her that I was no longer the man who would sit idly by while she played games. I stayed for the duration of the dinner, my heart heavy with sorrow and anger. They finished their meal and I watched as they left the restaurant hand in hand like nothing was wrong. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave before they spotted me. I drove home, the camera still recording, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge and justice. I was done being the victim. Tomorrow I would lay everything out on the table. Sarah would face the consequences of her betrayal, and I would ensure that I came out on top. To be continued. When I got home that night, I felt a mixture of adrenaline and despair. I had seen Sarah with David, together, laughing, acting like I didn't even exist. It was a brutal reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. I paced back and forth in the living room, the weight of what I had witnessed pressing down on me. I turned on the lights and replayed the footage from the camera, my heart sinking deeper each time I watched Sarah lean into David, her laughter ringing like nails on a chalkboard in my ears. I knew I had to confront her, and I needed to do it with both clarity and strength. I wouldn't let her spin this in her favor. The power dynamics in our relationship had shifted, and I was ready to reclaim my stance. With the evidence I had collected, I could no longer be the passive partner she had taken for granted. The next morning, I woke up feeling a mix of determination and dread. I had decided to confront Sarah right after work. I'd spent all day mentally preparing, rehearsing what I wanted to say, the questions I wanted to ask. I knew this would be a fight, one I was ready to win. When Sarah walked through the door in the evening, she seemed in good spirits, completely oblivious to what awaited her. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her smile bright and innocent. I forced a smile back, but inside I was a storm raging. "Can we talk?" I said, keeping my tone steady. "Yeah, sure, what's up?" she replied, casually tossing her purse onto the couch. I could see her relax, completely unaware of the confrontation that was about to unfold. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "I saw you last night," I said, my voice low but firm. Her smile faltered and confusion washed over her face. "Saw me? What do you mean?" "With David," I clarified, watching her expression shift from confusion to panic. "I have video evidence of you two together at the restaurant, laughing, flirting, like you don't have a husband waiting at home who's been nothing but loyal to you." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she seemed at a loss for words. "Mark, I can explain. It wasn't what it looked like." She stammered, her voice trembling. "Really?" "Because it looked pretty damning to me," I shot back, holding my phone in my hand, ready to pull up the footage if necessary. "You can't lie your way out of this one, Sarah. You've betrayed me. I didn't mean for it to happen. David was just a friend, and we've been working closely on that project. I swear nothing happened," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "Nothing happened," I interrupted, my anger boiling over. "You think I'm going to believe that? You've been lying to me for months. I've seen the late nights, the secretive texts, and now this. You think I'm just going to accept your excuses?" Her facade crumbled and her shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, I didn't want this to happen. I just felt so alone, Mark. You were so busy with work and I just wanted someone to talk to, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone to talk to, is that what you call it? I felt a mix of disbelief and disgust. You could have come to me. You didn't need to betray me with our lawyer of all people. I know. I messed up, but I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. She cried, tears welling in her eyes. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but the overwhelming hurt and betrayal clouded my ability to forgive. Love, I scoffed, my voice thick with bitterness. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't cheat. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have put me in this position. I could see the realization wash over her. She knew she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. What do you want from me, Mark? Just tell me how to fix this, she pleaded, desperation. Evident, I want honesty, I said, my voice steady. I want to know how long this has been going on. Was it just a fling? Or is there something deeper between you two? Please, I swear it was just a few meetings, nothing more. We were just talking about work. She stuttered, her eyes darting around, searching for a way out. Work? You think I'm that naive? You think I'll just believe you after everything? I said, my heart racing. You've lost my trust, Sarah. I can't just overlook this. Mark, please don't do this, she begged. I can change. I can prove it to you. Just give me another chance. That hit me hard. I had been considering what it would mean to forgive her, but now I realized I couldn't let her manipulate me into staying. You've had your chances, Sarah, I said coldly. You've thrown them away. I won't be your fallback option or your safety net while you keep lying to me. Her face fell and the tears began to fall freely. It was a powerful moment, a turning point. I could see the reality of her choices sinking in, but it didn't soften the blow of her betrayal. Just know this, I continued, my voice firm. I'm retaining Lisa and I'm going to fight for everything, our house, our savings, everything we've built together. I deserve that much and I won't let you walk away without consequences. Mark, please don't do this, she cried, her voice cracking. I can't lose you, I love you. Love isn't enough when it's built on lies, I replied, my heart aching but resolute. You've made your choices and now I'm making mine. With that, I turned away from her, my heart pounding in my chest. I had confronted the woman I loved, and now I was walking away from the life we had built. My resolve hardening, I knew that there was no turning back. I would fight for my dignity, my peace of mind, and my future. In that moment, I realized that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was ready to face them. I wouldn't let her betrayal define me. It was time to take back control of my life. To be continued. The days following my confrontation with Sarah were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a strange mix of empowerment and heartache, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump into an uncertain future. I was resolute in my decision to pursue a divorce, but there were lingering feelings of sadness and betrayal that kept nudging at me. I met with Lisa again, this time to formulate a game plan for the divorce. As I stepped into her office, I could feel the weight of the upcoming battles pressing on my shoulders. I'm glad you came in, she said, her tone professional yet warm. Let's go over what we need to do moving forward. I laid everything out on the table, the evidence I had gathered, the emotional toll Sarah's infidelity took on me, and my concerns about our shared assets. Lisa took notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. You have a solid case here, Mark, especially with the evidence of her affair. We can use this to negotiate a fair settlement. It felt empowering to be in control of the situation, but I knew I had to stay level-headed. What if she fights back? I asked, anxiety creeping into my voice. People often do, especially when they realize they're losing something they took for granted. Lisa replied, her gaze steady. But you have the upper hand. Focus on what you want out of this and don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. I nodded, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I want to ensure that I get my fair share of everything we built together. I'm not backing down. With that determination driving me, we discussed the logistics of filing for divorce. It felt surreal to be taking such a significant step, yet I was ready. I would not allow Sarah's betrayal to dictate my future. As we went over potential outcomes, I felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The idea of starting anew was both exhilarating and daunting. I began to visualize what life could look like without Sarah, a life where I could rediscover myself and heal from the wounds she had inflicted. The following week was filled with paperwork and meetings, and I found myself moving through a surreal haze. I had to remind myself to eat, to sleep, to stay focused on the task at hand. Lisa had become an integral part of my support system, guiding me through each step and ensuring I was prepared for any challenges that lay ahead. Then came the day I filed for divorce. Walking into the courthouse felt like stepping into a new chapter of my life. My heart raced as I officially submitted the paperwork, marking the end of one era and the beginning of another. I had never felt so empowered, yet so deeply saddened by the loss of what was once a cherished relationship. I thought about Sarah, how she would react to the news. I had no doubt she would be devastated, but she needed to understand that her actions had consequences. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into feeling guilty for choosing to reclaim my life. A few days later, Lisa called me to discuss the next steps. We need to prepare for the initial proceedings. She'll likely try to fight back, so having everything documented will be crucial, she said, her voice steady and reassuring. Later that evening, I decided it was time to have one last conversation with Sarah. I had avoided her since our confrontation, but this needed closure. I wanted her to understand that I was serious about moving forward. I texted her, asking her to meet me at a local coffee shop. When I arrived, I saw her sitting nervously at a table, her eyes darting around the room. She looked frazzled and pale, a stark contrast to the confident woman I once knew. As I approached, I noticed the tension in her shoulders, and I could sense that she was not prepared for the conversation that was about to unfold. "Hey," I said, taking a seat across from her. "Hey," she replied cautiously, her gaze avoiding mine. "I filed for divorce," I said bluntly, watching her reaction closely. Her expression shifted, a mix of shock and anguish washing over her face. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," she stammered, tears brimming in her eyes. "Mark, please, we can fix this. I'll do anything." "Sarah, it's too late," I said, my voice firm yet calm. "You made your choices, and now I'm making mine. I can't keep living in a lie or pretending everything is okay when it's not." "But I love you," she cried, her desperation palpable. "I never wanted to hurt you. Can't we try to work this out?" I shook my head, feeling a pang of sadness for the woman I once loved. "You had your chance, Sarah. You chose to betray me, and now I refuse to be the one who suffers for it. Please, just give me a little more time. I'll prove that I can change," she pleaded, reaching across the table, but I pulled back instinctively. "No, I need to think about my own well-being now. I've given you too many chances already, and I can't keep doing this," I said, my heart heavy. She broke down completely then, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I never wanted to lose you." As I watched her cry, I felt a mix of empathy and resolve. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but I knew I had to stay strong. "This is for the best, Sarah, for both of us. I wish you well, but I need to move on." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging heavily in the air. I took a deep breath and stood up, preparing to leave. "Take care of yourself, Sarah," I said softly, then walked away. As I stepped out into the cool air, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was finally doing what was right for me, and I was ready to embrace the next chapter of my life. To be continued. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Filing for divorce had felt like ripping off a Band-Aid, painful but ultimately relieving. I spent my days working with Lisa, preparing for what would be a challenging negotiation process. I moved through a range of emotions, from anger to relief, but there was also a sense of newfound strength that I hadn't felt in years. As the divorce proceedings began, I quickly realized that Sarah wasn't going to go down without a fight. She hired a formidable attorney, and the back-and-forth negotiations became intense. Each meeting felt like a battle, as we navigated financial settlements, asset division, and the emotional toll of our crumbling marriage. During this time, I found myself reconnecting with old friends and rediscovering hobbies I had neglected over the years. I took up running again, feeling the endorphins wash over me as I hit the pavement. The physical exertion became not only a way to cope with stress, but also a means of reclaiming my identity. I remembered who I was before Sarah, a passionate, ambitious individual with dreams and aspirations. One evening, as I was preparing for a tough negotiation meeting, I received a call from Lisa. "Mark, we have a chance to settle this amicably," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "Sarah's attorney has put forth an offer, but I think we can improve it for you." I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. The idea of settling felt like a double-edged sword. It could mean closure, but it could also mean facing Sarah again. "What's the offer?" I asked, bracing myself for what was to come. Lisa outlined the terms, and as she spoke, I could feel my heart racing. It was fair, but not entirely what I wanted. "I want to ensure I get my share of the house and the savings," I said, knowing how hard I worked for everything we had built together. "Absolutely, we can negotiate for that, but I think it's worth considering if you want to avoid a prolonged battle," Lisa replied, her tone measured. "Think about it. You can have closure, start fresh sooner, and avoid the emotional turmoil." I took a moment to consider her words. The urge for revenge had been strong, but ultimately I wanted peace. I didn't want to continue dragging this out. I thought about what Sarah had put me through and how much I had grown through this ordeal. I knew that moving on was necessary for my healing. After pondering for a day, I decided to accept the offer, with a few amendments to ensure I got my fair share. When I informed Lisa, she was pleased. "I think you're making a smart choice, Mark. This way, you can start focusing on your future." The day of the final settlement meeting arrived, and I walked into the conference room with a mix of nerves and determination. As I sat down across from Sarah, I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She looked like a shadow of her former self, and while part of me felt sympathy, I quickly reminded myself of the reasons I was there. The negotiations began, and as we went through the terms, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. The tension in the room was palpable, but I remained focused. When we finally reached an agreement, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had done it. I had fought for what I deserved, and I was ready to move on. As I signed the paperwork, I glanced over at Sarah. She looked defeated, and I could see the pain etched on her face. A part of me wanted to reach out to comfort her, but I knew that this moment was about me and my healing. I had to close this chapter and step into a new one. Once the paperwork was finalized, I felt an overwhelming rush of relief. I was free. I walked out of the building with a sense of clarity and purpose. I was ready to begin anew, without the weight of betrayal holding me down. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved to a new apartment, decorated it in a way that reflected who I was, and reconnected with friends. I even began exploring new interests, taking a cooking class, volunteering, and spending weekends hiking. The world felt vibrant again, filled with possibilities that I hadn't allowed myself to see while I was married. Looking back, I realized that this journey, though painful, had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of standing up for oneself. I had faced betrayal head-on and emerged stronger. I learned that I could love deeply but also recognize when it was time to walk away from a toxic situation. As I navigated this new chapter, I reflected on the experience and how it shaped me. If there's one piece of advice I would offer to anyone facing a similar situation, it's this: never lose sight of your worth. Even in the darkest moments, you have the power to reclaim your life. Surround yourself with supportive people, seek help when needed, and don't be afraid to fight for what you deserve. While I had lost a relationship I once cherished, I had also found a renewed sense of self. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold. Life was ahead of me, uncharted and full of possibilities. And for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful.